Welcome back to the Schlocky Horror Picture Show and the Phantom Planet. How many of you recognised the narrator as the voice of Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet? Former DJ Marvin Miller was the disembodied voice in just about everything, from Gigantus the Fire Monster, to Fantastic Planet, to Police Squad. The high point of his career was the role of Arthur Curry, better known as the world's lamest superhero, Aquaman, in the 1968 cartoon Aquaman, and he even appeared on screen as Armana in The Story of Mankind. More about that later. The Phantom Planet was directed by William Marshall, not to be confused with William Marshall who played the original Blackula in 1972, and definitely not the William Marshall who was a loyal knight to King Henry II in 12th century England. No, this William Marshall started as a vocalist for the Fred Waring Orchestra in 1936. As an actor, he had minor roles in a few films in the 40s and 50s, and his other two films as director, The Adventures of Captain Fabian and Hello God, both from 1951 and both starring Errol Flynn, were just as mediocre as tonight's movie. Interestingly enough, his directing career mirrored his personal life. His first marriage was to the beautiful French actress Michelle Morgan, his second was to beautiful French actress Micheline Presley, his third to the beautiful not-so-French Ginger Rogers, and all ended badly, just like his films. There's not much to be said about leading man Dean Fredericks. This is both the high point and low point of his film career. How sad is that? He appeared in quite a few 50s television shows, but apart from that, he's so boring I really couldn't be bothered talking about him anymore. The role of Heron is played by Anthony Dexter, whose career got off to a good start when he played Valentino in the 1951 biography inventively titled Valentino. It was a box office success, but things went downhill after that with such films as Fire Maidens from Outer Space and The Story of Mankind, which arguably holds the title for the worst film with the best cast ever, in which he played Christopher Columbus, former slave trader and future troublemaker. After a bit part in Thoroughly Modern Millie and a final role in an episode of The High Chaparral, he retired from the drudgery of acting for the glamour and excitement of teaching in high school. Doris Jensen's career also started well, first with a change of name to Colleen Gray, then key roles in two film noir classics, Kiss of Death, in which she was married to Victor Mature and menaced by Richard Widmark, and Nightmare Alley, where she was Tyrone Power's wife and partner in crime. The following year she was John Wayne's love interest in Red River. Then began the decline with many undistinguished films, except for Kansas City Confidential and Stanley Kubrick's first good movie, The Killing, and a prominent role in the 1960 film The Leech Woman. In 1964, she began campaigning for compulsory prayer in schools, and by 1986 the only film work she could get was in Bible basher Billy Graham's Cry from the Mountain. Introducing Dolores Faith as Zitha didn't quite work out. This is her career high point too, unless you count the educational film VD, aka Damaged Goods. She managed to get minor roles in 60s television shows like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. before achieving the Hollywood dream of marrying a Texan millionaire and retiring. Seems like the goods were in reasonable condition after all. Also amongst the cast of The Phantom Planet is the king of the movies. No, not King Kong, not Clark Gable, but the first actor to claim that title, Francis X. Bushman, who plays Sasson. Bushman made his film debut in 1911, and by the next year he was a major star because they didn't know any better back then. Indeed, he was the #1 male box office attraction in 1916 and 1917, but he lost popularity when he divorced his wife and married Beverly Bain, his co-star in many films, including the 1916 version of Romeo and Juliet, which he also directed. In 1924, he was cast as the villain Marsala in Ben-Hur. This was an enormous hit and should have revived his fortune, but around that time he got on the wrong side of that scoundrel Louis B. Mayer, who he later accused of ruining his career by blacklisting him. Francis was also in The Story of Mankind as the amoral collaborator in the mass murder of Egyptian babies, Moses. Oddly enough, The Phantom Planet did not restore Francis to stardom, and invitations to play romantic leads did not resume, only bit parts in shows like 77 Sunset Strip and Batman. His last film was The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini in 1966, and he sadly passed away that year after a fall. I mean a literal fall and not a career reflective of how the mighty have fallen type of fall, though that could have been lethal in his case. If you thought the jury was rather good looking, you'll be pleased or disturbed to know that Hugh Hefner would agree with you. Maria Carter and Marissa Mathis were Playboy Playmates of the Month in May and June of 1962 respectively, if not respectably. Angelique Pettyjohn is best remembered for her role as Shana in the popular Star Trek episode The Gamesters of Triskelion. By the early 80s, she was making porn films until she was rescued from that fate by the Star Trek phenomenon. She was guest of honour at many conventions until 1992, when she became a victim of cancer, aged only 48. Enough evidence of the unfairness of life in the real world. Time to watch the wildly exciting, or the mildly interesting conclusion of The Phantom Planet.